Over 1.6 million hectares of barley every year in Germany isn't used for baking, and it's not for feeding cows either. It's solely for brewing beer? Why are Germans so willing to ditch rice, corn, and hundreds of additives just to be absolutely loyal to a single type of grain? And what turned a glass of beer, which is really just a common drink, into a symbol of purity, discipline, and national pride? Welcome to a journey exploring a world that might seem super familiar, but holds some of the strictest rules on the planet. Today we're starting in endless fields of barley to figure out why Germany needs such a massive amount of farmland just to make beer, and what made them create the beer that's known as the purest in the world. We're going to follow the trail of those barley grains, from selecting the variety and farming under strict standards, all the way to the special brewing process, to find the answer to a question that seems pretty simple. Don't take your eyes off the video, because you might be surprised to learn. Behind the glass of beer you drink is a whole world that hasn't been fully told. Unlike the rest of the world, where beer can be made with corn, rice, and added chemicals, German beer is only allowed to ferment from the pure starch of barley. One glass of beer needs over 200 grams of malt, but not every barley grain makes the cut. Only about 60 to 70% of the harvest can be used for brewing. The rest gets rejected. The most common barley variety is two-row spring barley. It's low in protein, high in starch, and has a stable enzyme level, which helps the saccharification process happen naturally, without any chemical help. Prominent growing regions like Bavaria, Franconia, or Saxony are chosen because of their cool climate and long growing season, perfect for the barley grains to develop evenly and ripen naturally without needing chemical acceleration. Right from the start of planting, the farms strictly follow technical standards, minimize the amount of nitrogen fertilizer, tightly control the amount of irrigation water. Absolutely no genetically modified organisms, GMOs, are used. Because in the German beer industry, the quality of the raw ingredients determines the entire brewing process that follows. There's no room for error. As summer nears its end, the barley fields turn a golden yellow. This is also when the technical requirements enter their strictest phase, harvesting at exactly the right ripeness. The grain moisture must be below 14%. The grains must reach the ideal hardness to protect the thin husk. The healthy germination rate has to meet the standard. Harvesting is done quickly with combines, but the speed, pressure, and storage conditions are strictly monitored to avoid damaging the grains. Because even a small mistake, like a cracked husk or damp grains, can ruin the entire artificial germination process later, spoiling the beer's flavor. Right after the harvest, the barley grains are pre-cleaned, sorted by size, and any shriveled or broken grains are removed. They're gently dried at low temperatures. Then they're stored in sealed warehouses to await the most important transformation, becoming malt. The journey of turning a barley grain into the world's purest glass of beer doesn't start in the brewing tank. It begins with a crucial step, turning the barley into malt. You can think of it this way. If barley is the seed of flavor, then malt is the first gate that decides whether a beer can reach perfect balance. But this process isn't simple at all. You might think, as long as you have good barley, that's enough? Nope. In Germany, every barley grain has to go through an even stricter purification process before it even gets to the brewing stage, a second screening. Because only the most perfect grains, only those are good enough to enter the demanding malting process, where they'll be awakened, transformed, and prepared for an even greater mission, to become the soul of a truly pure glass of beer. Next, the barley is steeped in clean, cold water. Over 2 to 3 days, the water is changed constantly, both to provide oxygen and to encourage the grains to start sprouting. Here's an interesting question. Why steep them in water for so many days, when industrial breweries could use chemicals to speed things up? With German beer, everything has to happen naturally. Only when the grains sprout on their own, thanks to water and air, do the natural enzymes get activated properly. which helps the starch in the grains turn into simple sugars later on. After steeping, the barley is spread out thinly in the germination room, germination floor. Over 4 to 6 days, the grains will develop short white sprouts. Inside the grains, enzymes start chopping up the starch molecules. Can you imagine that? In just a few days, a hard barley grain turns into a living sugar-making machine. And if this sprouting process gets interrupted, the natural sweetness in the beer will be completely lost. Once the sprouts have developed sufficiently, the entire batch of malted barley is moved into the kiln. Kilning at low temperatures, approximately 122 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit, helps to halt the germination process, preserve the enzyme system within the grain. The kilning temperature will determine the flavor profile. If kilned lightly, it creates pale malts with a clean taste, Pilsner, Helles. If kilned intensely, it creates dark malts with caramel and sweet malt flavors, Bock, Dunkel. Do you notice something interesting? Just a 9-degree Fahrenheit change in the kilning temperature can completely alter the flavor of the beer. In Germany, the control of kilning temperature is precise, down to the hour, and for each batch. After drying, the malt is cooled naturally and then transferred to a sealed storage, awaiting the next step, crushing, mashing, and transforming into a glass of beer bearing the distinct mark of Germany. You see, before any beer barrel is brewed, even before a single drop of yeast ferments, the malt has already undergone dozens of absolutely precise steps. In Germany, they don't choose the easy path. No chemical forcing, no artificial acceleration, no compromise. Because a pure beer must begin with an equally pure start. Once the malt is ready, the next leg of the journey takes it to where the entire essence of the barley grain will be released, the brew house. Here, each batch of malt is crushed, not ground into a fine powder, but crushed just enough so that the outer husk remains intact. Why is this necessary? Because that very husk will act as a natural filter in the next stage. The crushed malt is mixed with hot water in a mash tun. The temperature is gradually raised through different rests, typically ranging from 144 to 162 degrees Fahrenheit, to allow the enzymes in the malt time to convert the starch into fermentable sugars. Each step, each temperature, each minute of mashing has been tested and recorded for hundreds of years, and the Germans don't break that formula. Here, brewing isn't about creativity, but a form of high-precision engineering. After the conversion is complete, this mixture, now called wort, is transferred to a lauter tun for filtration. The malt husks from earlier, seemingly useless, now become the perfect filter, retaining the spent grains and allowing only the clear, sugary liquid to flow down. The spent grains are not wasted either. They will be transferred to feed livestock. Next is a step considered the heart of German beer flavor, boiling with hops. The wort is vigorously boiled for about 60 to 90 minutes, and it is during this time that hops are added in stages. Start of the boil, for bitterness, middle of the boil, to create aroma depth, end of the boil, to retain delicate essential oils. Germans do not use artificial flavorings or industrially extracted hop products like some other countries. They use whole hop cones, gently dried, preserving all the essential oils. And this creates a profound difference in taste. A rounded, deep, non-harsh bitterness, and an extremely clean aftertaste. When the boiling process ends, the hot wort is rapidly cooled to below 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, preparing for the fermentation stage. From the outside, this might just look like a series of standard technical steps. But in Germany, every operation, from the speed of malt milling, water level, boiling time, stirring method, is so tightly controlled that the brewer sometimes seems like they are conducting a classical symphony. No improvisation, no compromise, only precision, and the belief that purity never comes from ease. Once the wort has cooled to the correct temperature, the transformation journey from grain to beer officially enters its most delicate stage, fermentation. Unlike many countries that choose top fermenting yeast, ale, to speed up the production process, the Germans are loyal to bottom fermenting yeast, characteristic of lager beers. Bottom fermenting yeast works slowly, only in a cool environment of about 46 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and requires at least 7 to 10 days of primary fermentation, while many industrial beers only take a few days. You might think, so slow, is it worth it? For the Germans, it's not just about speed. Slow fermentation helps maintain the natural balance of the beer's flavor. Not harsh, not too sweet, not overly alcoholic. The yeast works gradually, breaking down sugars into alcohol and CO2 in a stable manner, while also creating characteristic aroma compounds, which would never form if it were too fast. After fermentation is complete, the beer is not bottled immediately. It is transferred to cold conditioning tanks, lagering tanks, where at even lower temperatures, usually just 32 to 36 degrees Fahrenheit, the beer continues to rest for 3 to 6 weeks, sometimes longer. This stage no longer involves vigorous activity, but it is when everything strong, harsh, and unstable gradually becomes smooth. Yeast sediment settles, rough odors disappear, the bitterness becomes rounded and the aftertaste lingers. Many experts call this the time when beer learns to be silent to become deeper. Did you know? Many breweries in Germany, especially traditional ones, still lager their beer in natural underground cellars or in refrigerated steel-lined wooden tanks, not to be old-fashioned, but because they believe that time, space, and silence are the final secrets to beer reaching purity. And perhaps that is why, only in Germany, can a beer be both powerful and serene, both simple and surprisingly profound. When a glass of German beer reaches the drinker's hand, people often praise its smooth taste, gentle bitter finish, and pure hop aroma. But few know that behind it is a system of rules that has existed for over half a millennium. The Reinheitsgebot, also known as the Purity Law, was first enacted in 1516 in Bavaria, with a simple but powerful declaration. No beer shall be brewed from anything other than barley, hops, and water. At that time, this decree was not only intended to control quality, but also to protect public health and stabilize the wheat market. But over time, the Reinheitsgebot was no longer just a decree. It became an identity. You might ask, the world has changed. Why do Germans still adhere to a 16th century law? Because for them, this is not just a production rule, but a moral declaration of the brewing craft. No deceit, no additions or subtractions, no breaking the natural balance in the name of creativity. Even when the European Union opened up to beers with additives and flavorings, many German breweries still voluntarily print the Gebraut nach dem Reinheitsgebot, brewed according to the Purity Law, seal on every bottle, as a commitment to no compromise. You might think, is a 500-year-old law still relevant? But look back. While the world chases creative beers, fruit beers, caramel beers, espresso beers, German beer still stands alone, unadorned, not cloyingly sweet, not noisy. It is that steadfastness, that absolute loyalty to the 3 core ingredients that makes a glass of German beer unlike anything else. And the Reinheitsgebot is no longer just a law, but a living declaration. Purity is not a limitation. Purity is integrity. And if next time you raise a glass of German beer, remember, it's not just the bitterness, but the taste of history, of principle, and of national pride. Have you ever tried a proper German beer? And do you think purity, in beer and in any product, is still worth protecting in today's world? If you found the journey of this beer glass interesting, don't forget to click subscribe and follow the channel.